So, one of the things that you have done for my family, other than bringing me immense joy, is change the way we eat, like a lot, or at least like what we think about eating. So you will introduce me to sourdough, and I've actually made sourdough from your starter. It's delish. I've tried a starter, and I just don't have the patience. Um, and you definitely are more like on the carnivore side of things, eating whole foods. Has that always been how you are, or is that like a newer thing?
I think old and new.
I
So
was gonna say, 'cause since I've known you, you've been pretty clean. Like you've never
for the
been
most
like
part.
I've never seen you eat a bag of Doritos.
So growing up, my mom never bought anything from a box
Mm,
or anything like that. We never had excessive sugars or anything in the
mhm.
house, anything that was artificial, really. She didn't ever buy.
Your mom is amazing.
So
She's like running the world and making sure you don't die.
so culturally, I'm my mother's side of the family is from the Middle East. And
Mhm.
so food is a huge everything revolves around food in the
Right.
Middle East. I mean, you come over to somebody's house for tea or something and they put out a spread. I mean,
Mhm.
it's just the way it is. And so I grew up watching my family, my aunts, my grandmother, my mom cooking forever,
Mhm.
ever since I was little. And I think that's definitely what sparked my passion in cooking. But we always ate pretty clean. Everything was, for the most part, very whole, a
Mhm.
ton of vegetables, a ton of salads, a lot of meat
Mhm.
and not really anything that was out of a box or artificial
Mhm.
at all. So fast forward to
Mhm.
college, I
Yeah.
leave for college and I'm like, I'm free to eat and do whatever it is that I want, and I was buying pizza rolls all the time. Like my mom would never let us have it, but I would see other people doing
Yeah.
it and I was born in South America, but by the time we came to the US, I was still fairly young
Mhm.
and I would see people drinking those colored drinks and, the hugs. Is
Yeah.
that what they're
Oh gosh.
Yes. And
Yikes.
I wanted those so bad. And I remember like trying it because somebody would give me one at
Mhm.
school or something. And I'm like, this is disgusting, but I'm supposed to like it because all the kids are drinking it. And
Yeah.
this is the normal thing. And we didn't have a lot of money because we immigrated to the US and my parents had to kind of start from scratch.
Yeah.
So I just assumed that that was what you ate when you
Yeah.
came here. But even since then, my mom would always try really, really hard to make sure that whatever it was that we were eating was some sort of whole food and
Mhm.
kind of like a one ingredient thing,
Yeah.
where it wasn't like I'm going to buy box of mashed potatoes, which there's nothing wrong with that. There are mashed potatoes out there in a box that literally the ingredient is potato. It's
Right.
just dehydrated. But then you have another box that also has MSG and also has sodium and also
Mhm.
has milk solids and also and so
Mhm.
so she was very much on the side of like the one ingredient type
Yeah.
thing. But she didn't know that that was a fad or anything that it would become a fad.
Right.
And so that's how kind of how I grew up. But then when I left my house, I dabbled,
Mhm. You made your own choices.
made my own choices, of course,
Mm.
especially because I could and
Yeah.
I had a job and I could buy my own food and I could do whatever. And so I got a taste of that and I told myself I liked it and a
Mhm.
lot of things it was for convenience sake.
Yeah.
I was in culinary school and so I would spend 8 hours a day in class. I'm exhausted by the time I get home, so I'm gonna pop some pizza rolls in the oven
Yeah.
because that was
It's
what was
easy.
easy.
Mhm.
I ate a lot of pizza.
Okay, so you're in college and you're eating a bunch of pizza rolls. How did you come back to the whole foods and the making better choices for your family?
I think because I was raised on that whole foods kind
Mhm.
of diet, it was natural. It was the
Yeah.
most natural for me to
Mhm.
kind of go back to it because I didn't really see, aside from the convenience, there wasn't a lot of love in what I was making,
Mhm.
because I felt like the food that I was raised on, it took hours to make some of the dishes
Yeah.
and time and planning and preparing. And there was like a love aspect to that
Mhm.
you don't get from a
Pizza
bag of
rolls.
pizza rolls. You really don't. And so I meet my husband, I'm in college, and then I want to bring that love back into the food
Mhm.
because I love him. And I, like I said,
Yeah.
I wanted to just be in the moment. And so coming back to whole foods and coming back to like real food. Plus, I
Mhm.
was learning in school different recipes and ingredients and
Yeah.
things. And so I was able to kind of draw myself back
Into it.
into it. And I found a bigger passion for the love side of food and
Mhm.
taking the time to make it versus the convenience side.
Yeah. I think that's a big thing too, like, and it's gonna be so much better. Like, it's just
100%.
gonna taste better. Um, so I think for us, like, I was definitely not raised that way. Like, it was like Chef Boyardee, ramen. I mean, my mom cooked and she made good food, but there was definitely a lot of convenience, especially as we got older. And it was
Mhm.
like, well, I'm out with my friends or my brothers were, had sports. Like we're 4 and 6 years apart. So if my little brother had sports, like I didn't have to go because I was old enough to stay home, but I wasn't going to cook something. So there was always ramen. There was like 99. I have them now in case a hurricane comes and we like have to eat them, but like, ew, would
Yeah.
never now. Like, no, thank you. Um, I think for me, well, it was always so intimidating because when you don't grow up knowing like, oh, well, these foods are good, and um, I think and also not even, like, realizing that they're bad,
Yeah.
like, because we're told, like I mean, my dad, like, would buy huge bags, never the brand name, so we've been boycotting Kellogg's my whole life because you had to have the big Walmart or Weiss brand bag of cereal, which I have never understood, and we to this day make fun of him for it. Um, so like cereals, like that's easy, that's quick. And then like you're looking at the sugar and I'm like, wait a minute, that's like a lot of sugar.
Yeah.
I think what started for me is I've always struggled with my weight my whole adult life. So when I was like in college age and all and like getting married and everything, like I wanted to lose weight for my wedding and I wanted to do this and I would. And so like I did a whole 30 and it just opened my eyes to how much stuff is in our food.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is like completely unnecessary. Like, why is all this here? And then just like slowly but surely, like changing things. And like now so I think just like doing little things at a time has kind of helped us. But like, we don't do the dyes in the house, we don't do the, red 40, whatever. Um, and we don't do what else do we do? Oh, like the seed oils. We're really cautious about the seed oils. But that takes a long time
Yeah.
too. Like to just sit in the I mean, I have sat in the cereal aisle many a times with my cinnamon toast crunch loving child,
Yeah.
weeping because I won't get it. And I'm like, babe, like it's too bad for
I'm
you.
doing this for you.
For you, not because I'm your enemy, but in the
Yeah.
moment, I feel like the enemy. Um, so what like little quick things, like if someone's like, "Hey, I wanna start eating better,"
Mhm.
what are, like, little quick things that you think are doable? Because groceries are $4,000,000 for, a week, and something that, like, is easy to understand because there's so much nuance to everything, like, this seed oil is okay, like, this is a 2 and this is a 10, and,
Yeah.
like, it gets exhausting to the
Yeah.
point where I'm just like, "Well, I'm not eating any of them because I don't know what they all do." Like, we have friend like, Chris I think about Crystal who, like, knows all her food stuff, and,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
I'm like I just,
It's
like,
a lot. It's
if
a
I
lot.
ate it in Costa Rica, I eat it here, like, that's just kinda like my which was Nutella, which I don't think is great, but I'm doing it, like
Well, I think people are afraid to go down that road because it seems so complicated.
Yeah.
When in the reality is it should be as simple as possible. And so people reach out to me all the time and ask
Mhm.
me like, where do I start? I don't know what to do. How do I eat this? Why shouldn't I eat that?
Yeah.
And I always come back to, I could tell you a million different things, but I always come back to, will the body recognize it as a natural or whole food? Or will it recognize it or will it not recognize it because it's a synthetic
Yeah.
lab made
Mhm.
ingredient?
And when
And
you
so
say that, it sounds so gross,
it
right?
sounds
It
terrible, but
sounds
Nutella is
disgusting.
delicious.
Delicious.
That's the
Freaking
problem, right?
Nutella. Yeah.
So I tell people start with your fats.
Mhm.
People do not like it when I use the word fat
Right.
because it has this so negative
Well, we grew
connotation
up
to
in the
it.
90s and 2000s where
Fat
everything
was a
was
bad word.
fat-free and, those snack wells, like,
Oh,
everything was
yes. 100-calorie packs, the
Yes.
whole thing. And
Yeah.
so we are so terrified of that word. And now that
Mhm.
I teach at a cooking studio, I see people's faces when I'm talking about butter or oil or anything, I
Mhm.
use the word fat on purpose because I want to get away from that negative kind of connotation that
Yeah.
you feel, or, that sensation that you get when you
Yeah.
hear the word
Like,
fat.
no, I can't.
Yeah. And so I use the word fat all the time. So fat, number one, is it a natural fat? Butter, tallow, lard. Some people say certain seed oils are
Mhm.
okay. I personally stay away from all of them unless I get chips and salsa.
Yeah.
That's my right there.
Yeah.
That's my limit. But I use butter in place of
Mhm.
everything in my household.
Mhm.
I use tallow when I cook or fry. Actually made brownies with tallow recently
Ooh, were they
instead of
delicious?
instead of oil. Delicious. And same with lard or bacon grease. So all of those fats that
Mhm.
come from a natural source, your cow, your pig,
Mhm.
um, though that's where I would start with people. And also I tell them, read the ingredients. Do you know what all of these ingredients are? Like, do you actually know what
Mm.
MSG is, or have you just heard it and you're like,
Right.
yeah, MSG is normal and you can eat it? Well, some people will argue that MSG is perfectly safe and fine, but
Mhm.
I'm not willing to put something like that in my body because I didn't watch them make it.
Yeah.
I didn't see it running around eating grass at a farm
Yeah.
either. And so for me personally and my family, we just choose to eat things that are a natural source of
Mhm.
food versus something that was created in a lab. And that goes down to the smallest level too. If you think
Mhm.
about milk, you buy whole
Oh,
milk at
yeah.
the store and it has synthetic vitamin D. Well, why does it have synthetic vitamin D? Because when they pasteurize it, they kill all the bad bacteria in it.
Mhm.
They also kill all the good. So they're putting in the synthetic stuff. So you think you're drinking just milk with vitamin D, but it's fortified. And
Yeah.
so that vitamin D isn't going to be absorbed by your body in the same way that a natural source of vitamin D will, because the body has no idea what it is, no matter how much they try in the lab to make it seem like the real
It should
vitamin
be.
D. Yeah.
Do you use olive oil or avocado oil, or do you do no?
I don't use any of those,
Mhm.
but I grew up in my house. Extra virgin olive oil was the only oil that my family
Mhm.
used. I mean, they occasionally like canola if they were going to fry, but it wasn't very often like deep fry
Mhm.
anything. Um, Extra virgin olive oil and olive oils, this is where it gets tricky, right?
Yeah.
Because people are like, well, this is a natural oil that comes from olives. Yes, they're pressed, but some would say that depending on how they're pressed,
Mhm.
and how they're synthesized and all of these things, some people say you should only heat them to 300 degrees. Some people say you should only eat them completely cold, and
Yeah.
you just kind of
There's lots
have
of
to
nuance.
decide for yourself on that
Mhm.
front. I don't use oil at all in my
Yeah.
house. There is the occasional, I have olive oil if I'm making focaccia. So I'll buy
Mm.
olive oil straight from Italy that has one origin source on the
Mhm.
bottle that's from Italy. And I'll use that
Yeah.
for that specific reason. But I use
Mhm.
butter. I use butter 99% of the time for everything.
Yeah. I like having butter in the house. I think I well, someone in our family saw a video I posted, and this is also your fault, of me serving Xander a date with butter in it, and they were like, "You're just eating butter?" And they were like, "Yeah." First of all, it's now one of my favorite snacks,
Yes.
and I have them all the time. It's like something if I want something sweet at bedtime, that's what
Mhm.
I'll go for. The boys will eat them now too, which I remember the first
Nice.
time you brought them out, and I was like, "You are freaking gross, dude. Like, that looks like a bug. Like, stop it now." There have been so many times where I've been like, "Why is she making me do this?"
Yeah.
But, I think getting in that mindset too of, like, this stuff is actually bad and scary, and I think in my mind, I don't want to get stuck up in the convenience. I do have frozen chicken nuggets for those days,
Yep.
but to get stuck in the convenience and then my kids leave and they don't know because, like, you left and you did your own thing, but then you came back to it because it's like you knew that this is what my body needs to be healthy.
Yeah.
And both my kids are athletes. Like, I just want them to be trained on, like, okay, well, this is what's going to fuel your body best. Um, so once we met you, we started eating sourdough. I started making bread. I actually have bagels rising now. Um, because the boys want bagels. And I'm like, I go to the store to buy the, $1.99 bagels from Aldi. But why is there 48 million ingredients? Because the ones I have are like 7 because it's cinnamon raisin.
Yeah.
Um, so I think too, like, just getting it out of our heads, like, that this is this is okay, this is what we should be eating. We
Yeah.
ate it and we're fine. No, we're not. Like, all of us are, like, dealing with something, you know?
Something. There's
So
so much chronic disease, so many
so much.
autoimmune, and so many things that have
Yes.
crept up. And all of a sudden you look up and you're like, how did we get here?
Yeah.
And a lot of times you can heal those things with your diet. And I
Yeah.
think for everyone, it's a matter of figuring out
Mhm.
which kind of diet. I know a lot of people who can eat bread and many people who can't. I
Mhm.
know people who decide that for themselves that vegetables treat them just fine.
Mhm.
Other people absolutely cannot have them because their
And you
body
don't really do
reacts.
vegetables, do
I
you?
don't eat vegetables.
Yeah.
And this was a hard one for my family to stomach because, like
Mhm.
I said, we grew up eating, salads and veggies, like
Mhm.
a lot of
Mhm.
vegetables in my house. And now, so we go home for Thanksgiving or Christmas or get together and they pull
Mhm.
out all of the veggies and all of the things. And I'm like, sorry, no, I don't say anything. Of course, I'm not
Yeah.
going to be rude. I'm going to eat what I can eat because I'm
Yeah.
not also one to be like, oh,
Yeah.
I can't eat that. But I go prepared because I know not everybody eats the way that I eat. And so I don't go to every opportunity where there's food expecting to be able to eat everything,
Yeah.
because once you've kind of removed yourself from all of these things, the seed oils and the gluten
Mhm.
and all of these things, your body cannot tolerate them.
Yeah.
So once you try to go back to it, you're in trouble.
Yeah, your
um,
stomach is going to hurt.
yeah, and so they don't understand. They're like, but it's a cucumber, but it's a salad. Why won't you eat a salad? Why won't you
Mhm.
eat kale, or why, a
Mhm.
tomato or whatever? But I know that if I eat that, my body is just going to reject it. And
Yeah.
and it's not that those things are necessarily bad. So I think that's where people don't want to use that. Same with like the word fat.
Mhm.
The same thing goes for like good food, bad food, because
Right.
then we create an issue and some
Mhm.
people mentally can't handle that. But we also need to ask ourselves, where is this food coming from?
Mhm.
How is it being made? How is it being sourced? Because sometimes a tomato is not just a tomato. Sometimes it's got GMO seeds in it,
Mhm.
and it can alter your DNA.
Which is bananas.
Some of these things just are not meant to be in your body. And
Mhm.
so ask myself that all the time. Like, is this
Yeah.
something that I'm willing to put in my body? How is my body going to react to certain things?
Mhm.
And so I only eat fermented vegetables. So kimchi, sauerkraut, cucumbers, and I will eat easy to digest berries like
Mhm.
strawberries, blueberries occasionally.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I don't eat any
I mean, for me,
vegetables.
that's great because I don't really like any of that stuff. I like veggies more than I like fruit. So, like, blueberries gross me out. The
What?
texture's nasty. Okay, Miss Bananas.
I hate bananas.
Bleh. I saw when we were in Costa Rica what a real banana looks like, and I was like, "Well, I don't even know what they're giving us. Like, that's not a banana." That blew my mind. So, well, how can you mess with a
I
banana?
know. Sorry,
But
this is bothering me.
I think the other thing too is just I think just like taking it like a step at a time, figuring out. And I do think like I don't think something like the Whole 30 is sustainable for life where you cut everything out. But to do a Whole 30 just and then slowly add things back in, you can see well what makes you retain water, what makes you gain weight, what makes you have the poops,
Irritable.
right? What makes you moody. Um, and I think that's too the Whole 30 is what got me drinking my coffee black because I was like, I don't need all this extra stuff. Now I do like honey or maple syrup. Again, I'd
Yes.
never done that before. Um, and ketchup. Ketchup grosses me out now. I used to love ketchup. Ketchup was fine. Now I'm like, why would I eat that? Unless I'm
Yeah.
making it, which I can't afford to do because my kids drink it. So I'm like, okay, I just have to get the best possible option at the store that won't bankrupt me. But I do think too, like finding that, okay, I don't want to put this in my body, but I don't have $5 million to spend at the grocery store. So finding those brands that are better, like I know Aldi doesn't do the food dyes.
Yep.
Um, and just like if we're in a pinch and I need the cereal, okay, we'll go to Aldi. You can get one cinnamon toast crunch, which I agree, cinnamon toast crunch is
It's
amazing. I
delicious.
did try making it from scratch, and I made, like, big, thick like, they're, like, so thick crackers. I think because you hadn't taught me how to make pasta yet, I
I
didn't
have
know
the ultimate cinnamon toast crunch hack.
what is it?
You're gonna hate it.
Oh, yes, I am.
You're gonna
I
hate
saw
it.
it. No, I already know what you're going to say. The pork rinds. But
I am telling you, it tastes exactly like Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Growing up, that was probably one of my favorite cereals. When I tried it, I was like, how do I get this in my body faster?
Yeah.
Like, I loved Cinnamon Toast Crunch. I would eat it out of the box.
That's Xander and Bennett's favorite.
Pork rinds, milk, a little bit of cinnamon, and maple syrup. And I'm telling you, I mean, they get a little squishy fast, so you have to eat it fast to keep it crunchy. That's most cereals.
Yeah. So ever since you went on your whole like carnivore thing, and then I was like, well, maybe I'm gonna go on a carnivore thing. I've been getting pork rinds and eating them.
I'm so proud of you.
I know. And they're like good too, right? Like I don't hate them. I only get the ones from, was it BJ's, and it's like
in the big tub.
Yeah. No, it's like a bag.
Yes.
It's like brown and pink, I think.
Well, you know, so pork rinds. So immediately you think snack. It's like it's snacky or it's bad for you or whatever. If you look on that bag, what does it say? Pork skin, pork fat. Like,
yeah, that's it.
Literally, that's it. And so that's what I'm looking for when I'm looking at food. If I'm going to buy something or a treat or something, well, okay, how many, like, where is this being sourced from? How many ingredients am I looking at? Yeah. Is my body going to recognize these things? Right. And not to say, like, if you've never eaten pork rinds, your body's not going to recognize that. No, I mean, like, bioavailability from it. You know, it's an organic food, you know? And so your body is like, oh, I recognize this. I recognize the lipids. I recognize the protein. I recognize the vitamins. I recognize the minerals. I can digest this easier, because when your body doesn't know what it's eating or how to digest it, it inflames up, you know? So you've got all this inflammation and you've got all of this.
Which is a lot of the problem with causing the
your
chronic
body
stuff.
has no idea what to do with it.
Yeah.
And so you flare up in all of these other ways that you're just like,
I saw it fly. Like
you flare up because your body has no clue what to do with it. Yeah. And so then you've got eczema and you've got all of your problems. That's kind of, we got into more serious eating and more serious eating habits and checking our ingredients when my daughter had so much eczema and asthma and so many issues with her body that we decided to look at the food, because the doctors wouldn't tell us that. They just wanted to give her medication forever for the rest of her life. Good gracious. And so we're like, there has to be something that's got to give. Like, it can't just be medication forever. You know, that's another thing I learned from my mom. She never gave us medicine. Pharmaceuticals were like, absolutely not. I mean, if we were really sick and the doctor needed to give us something to help, she would give it to us for like a day or two and then she'd cut it off. So like antibiotics, you're supposed to do the whole round. She never finished a round, ever. I had surgery when I was in high school. She let me take a painkiller one time. And after that, she's like, you're going to have to suck it up. You know, I wasn't in a whole lot of pain, but she was like, absolutely not. You know? So growing up, that was also like pharmaceuticals just didn't make sense in my life. And so for my child, especially, I was like, absolutely not. She's not going to be on medication her whole life. And so I started looking into, well, what can we change? And the thing that nobody tells you is that the food can change your skin and your nails. Oh yeah. All of your problems can go away. Yeah. If, you know, with
you eat the right things. Yeah. I think that's what again, when we were in Costa Rica, we were talking about, Crystal called them gluten bumps. And both my kids had them, my oldest especially, and I had never heard of them called gluten bumps. Our pediatrician, who I love, was like, oh, it's just like a normal skin thing. They'll grow out of it. You know, like didn't pay it any mind. And then so when I came home from Costa Rica, I cut gluten. No more bumps. No more bumps. Yeah. And I've noticed too, like since cutting, I've always been big on the screens. Well, since the kids were a little bit older, big on like the screens and how that messes with their behavior. And I was reading this book called Glow Kids, and they talk about how a lot of kids are diagnosed ADHD and all these things. And then I think is it you or me?
Keeps buzzing. Sorry.
Okay. Where, you know, if you take the screens out, if you do a cold turkey cut on screens, so many of these symptoms will go away. And so the more I've learned about food, I'm like learning that like if you start taking the dyes out and you start taking all these things out, then the behavior is so much different. And we noticed when we did like strict carnivore for like a month, and our oldest wanted to participate. Not only did he change physically, but he was like so clear-minded. Like it seemed like his logic kicked in. Like, excuse me. So I feel like too, if we realize the importance of what it's doing for us, it's easier to follow through with.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, and there's something else I was gonna say.
It's a lot easier because then you feel so much better. So you're like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to continue this. It's like working out. When you start working out, you're like, I feel great. I want to do this more, even though you
Right.
might hate it in the moment.
Right.
Afterwards, you love it, you know? And I remember when we started kind of doing more carnivore and
Mm-hmm.
just more animal based. I wouldn't say fully carnivore because
Yeah.
we do eat certain things that are not like the dates technically
Mm-hmm.
aren't carnivore, but I started to sleep so much better. I
Mm-hmm.
started to feel so much better. My skin was so much better. Just implementing very small changes.
Yeah.
In the beginning, I thought it would be hard. My sister actually decided she was going to do carnivore. I think she did it for like 5 weeks. It was like a jump start to see
Mm-hmm.
what was going on digestively. And many people do it just to begin with to see
Yeah.
what changes they need to make. And she said, you know, her husband hated it because
Mm-hmm.
he's like, I need rice, I need beans, I need,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like after a while, the meat just became too much and they didn't want to do it anymore. I have been doing this for a year and I'm like, when is that? I'm expecting it. I'm
Yeah.
expecting to be like, I don't want to eat this anymore. I don't want to eat ground beef again. I don't
Yeah.
want to eat steak again. It has never happened. There
Yeah.
hasn't been a day where I'm like, I don't want to eat meat.
I do think that's like one thing that's been hard for us to maintain it is I could eat a bowl of meat with like homemade taco seasoning all day, every day for
Every
the rest of my life. The other people at my house were like, "Well, we need some variety." But do you? Like just eat the
Mhm.
bowl of ground beef, man. Um I
I
have
had a
done
bowl of
steak.
ground beef for breakfast today.
No, I've definitely done that. And like
Mm.
I could do that. I make the like carnivore egg casserole thing
Yeah.
all the time. Every week we have one.
Hmm.
And I change up the the meat I put in it to try to like spice things up.
No.
But I think you just have to be okay with like you're not gonna have a ton of variety. Like you might have different seasonings or something, maybe.
Yeah.
But having just being okay with like this is really one of the so like I said, I've struggled with my weight my whole adult life. So I've had nutritionists and trainers and all the things. One of the nutritionists I had was like, I literally don't eat food because I enjoy it. I eat it because I need it to live. And so like he doesn't feel like he deals with these, cravings for pizza or craving because he knows that's not going to benefit him in any way. I'm like, how do I get to that mindset?
Yeah.
That would be great. Because I do still love my chips and dip. And
Love them.
we do go on a margarita date once a week,
Yeah.
and there are chips and dip.
Yeah.
Um, I think too, also learning to enjoy your life, enjoy date night, and then come home and eat the bowl of ground beef
Yeah.
and figure it out. And so it's been like a slow and steady for us, but I think too, it's showing the kids too, like sometimes just like making the right healthy choices isn't always like the fun choice. I work at a donut shop. They want me to bring donuts home every single day. I'm like, I can't bring you donuts every day. We had a once a week donut rule when I was working more. Now that I don't work every week, they're like,
We
can you
miss the
can you
donuts.
get a donut? I'm like, we'll
You can make
see.
carnivore donuts.
I have seen that. That's my other problem with this whole. I can't do all that. Like if I'm not gonna make a carnivore donut, 'cause it's not gonna taste like the delicious donut my friend makes, and that's the donut I want. So I'm just gonna like I literally
Just eat the donut.
I could just either eat that or just eat the bowl of ground beef because I don't care. Like I can do that and I'm not bored. I
Yeah.
put a little avocado on there. It's like a freaking taco bowl.
When I went to culinary school, they teach you, I don't know who came up with this. The culinary gods, I guess, but the protein, the starch, and the vegetable on
Mhm.
the plate with plating and how you're supposed to
Mhm.
do it and your portions and all of this. And so I thought that that's how you had to eat
Mhm.
all the time. Plus, you have a salad, you have an appetizer, or
Right.
salad, plus, you have dessert. So it's
Mhm.
like a 3-course meal all the
All
time.
the time.
When I met my husband and we got married, that was how I cooked all the time. The
Mhm.
3-course meal. You have a salad, you have a protein, you have a starch, you have every meal,
Mhm.
okay, for dinner.
Yeah.
And now, because we do eat more like carnivore or animal based, it's kind of boring. Like it's
Yeah.
mostly the same thing over and over. You know, for lunch we eat ground beef pretty much every single day.
Yeah.
For dinner, it's something with ground beef or a steak. You
Mhm.
know, and so sometimes that part of me creeps up where it's like you trained on how to do it this
Yeah.
way, and you know, and then I feel kind of guilty because I'm like, well, how can I add variety and how can I, you know,
Mhm.
bring in a 3-course meal
Yeah.
this way, you know, and so kind of pulls on my creativity, but most of the time I'll start to feel kind of guilty where I'm like, do you want something else?
Yeah.
Am I feeding you okay? Like,
Yeah.
is this going all right? And he doesn't care. He'll just
Yeah.
eat whatever I give him. So I have to try and to remember why I'm
Mhm.
doing it. I have to
Yeah.
remind myself, like, the reason I feel that way is because I was trained up, for
To
one, literally,
Yeah.
in school, trained up to eat that way.
Right.
But also, look at how much better you feel now. Look at
Mhm.
how much you're thriving. For years, I struggled with wanting to look a certain way,
Mhm.
and I couldn't get there by eating salads. You said you
Right.
can't eat. What was it that you said you couldn't eat? My nose is itchy.
Ketchup? Ugh. I hate ketchup. Gross.
Ketchup, for me, kale. I could never eat kale ever again. I would buy, you go to the grocery store,
Mhm.
they've got the
Yeah.
massive bags of kale. I would go through one of those two of those a week.
Good lord, what were you doing with
Because
it?
I would go to the gym and I would come home and I would take a bunch of that kale and I would make a huge salad and I would eat
Mhm.
that when I got home from the gym. And I would eat it every day because I thought that was how I was going
Mhm.
to make myself better. And I was losing weight and looking better because I was going to the gym, not
Mhm.
because the kale was doing anything to
Yeah.
me. I'm not a cow, believe it or not. Eating your greens and eating your salads, it's like, do you have five stomachs? Is it
Mhm.
fermenting in your gut? That's
Yeah.
how cows eat, and those animals that have those kind of ruminant stomachs, they're eating it, it's being digested five different times. And
Right.
so it's fermenting, and that's where they get their nutrients. That doesn't happen to us. We eat it and our body freaks out because it's like, I don't know what to do
Yeah.
here. And
Whatever.
so you're full for 5 minutes because you
Mhm.
just ate half a bag of salad, and then you're hungry immediately
Mhm.
right after, right? It's
Right.
like 30 minutes later, you're starving again. And you're like, well, how? I just ate half a bag of salad. And it's because there's no nutrition really happening in
Mhm.
there. So I struggle with the making it kind of make sense
Yeah.
in the meal world, but at the same time, I know what's going to make me feel better. I have never felt better in my life.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
The mental clarity that you were talking about, like the change in my body,
Mhm.
like all of that.
Yeah.
It's huge.
I definitely think too with the whole, like, understanding, well, this is how, like, I eat this and I was fine. We're not, but also, like, the food pyramid scam, like, you gotta be freaking kidding me. Who came up with that?
Mhm.
Bananas. And then, I mean, we grew up the same way, like, you had meat, you had a starch, and you had a veggie, and we had to eat our vegetables, and we had to
Yeah.
clear our plates, and I don't think my mom made us clear our plates. I don't think so. I don't remember if she did. Um, but I think my mom, I know that she made meatloaf, she made chicken pot pie, tacos, like, we had some staples, which I think maybe is probably one of the reasons why I'm okay eating the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
But my husband, his mom was the same way, like, Tuesday was this day, Wednesday, and now he won't eat any of those things, including chicken pot pie and meatloaf, which I love, and I'm like, You should eat these
So
things.
mean.
They're so good." Um, so yeah, especially with what's going on in the world today, like, and people are waking up to, like, all this crap in our food,
Yeah.
and that we are so sick, like, this country is so sick. I have a friend who works, I wanna say for LabCorp, could be Quest, but it's one of those, and she does, like, trials and clinics and stuff, and she said this is forever ago, so I might be messing it up, a European country, and she was talking to doctors over there, whatever, the people she needs to talk to, clients, and they showed her, like, a graph of, like, cancer rates. I'm like, "Barely anyone has cancer over there. It's, like, rare. It's, no big, like, not everywhere. You don't not everyone knows someone who has it, and here, it's like every other person is being
Yeah.
diagnosed constantly, and this is not nearly as serious and not nearly as scientific, but I was watching Love Is Blind, and which is quality TV, and but I watched Love Is Blind, the US version, and then I was watching the UK version. This guy comes out and, like, he has this big confession to make, and I'm like, "Oh, what is it? It's
What
gonna be
is
good,
It's
right?"
gonna be
And he's
juicy.
like, "I have ADHD." It was such a big deal because not everyone there is diagnosed with it, and, like, he explained it to the camera like we didn't all know, and I was, like, amazed. I was like, "They don't all You don't know 47 people diagnosed with that? Because I know at least 47 people diagnosed with that.
Yes.
Like, just one, I think it's probably overdiagnosed, but two, that there's so much stuff making us so sick, and it's our
Mhm.
food. And then, the food babe starts her petition with Kellogg's, and, you start to think, like, why is it that, the Canadian version is so much cleaner than, like,
Yeah.
why are we allowing this
Yeah.
into our homes? It's just a little bit crazy, but
It's wild because I think there comes a certain point where you do have to kind of look up and be like, this can't be.
mhm,
I'm in my 30s and I have known so many people with cancer,
mhm.
and I'm like young with cancer. I'm
Yeah,
like, how is this possible?
yeah,
Like at a certain point you have to say like this cannot be normal,
mhm,
And so there's this moment of like I can't allow that to just continue on. Like
mhm.
I feel like I have to do something about it,
Yeah,
right? Not like
and
you
all
can
you can
cure
do is
cancer,
your family.
yeah, all you can do is your family. And
Yep,
so you have to like look at things logically and be like, well, what are we doing every day that's causing these
mhm,
rates of things to increase? And it's the blue light, we're on
mhm,
our phones or tablets, or a lot of that stuff is necessary nowadays. It's just how society has gone. But food,
mhm.
you can control your food. And a lot of people don't want to.
Yeah.
They really don't want to.
That, and they either don't know because they don't care to know, because it's out there enough now where I feel like you're choosing not to know at this point. Or it's so overwhelming. Like, I think about, like, again, I was only working 30 hours a week and I was home by noon, well, 12:30 most days. But the thought of, like, making a loaf of bread was exhausting.
Yeah.
So you're tired because you've been forced into this work cycle, or you're choosing to work and you love your job, but then something gets left behind. It's usually, what you're cooking in the kitchen. And I think too, the I know for me, like, the intimidation, like,
Yeah.
okay, I wanna make my family eat cleaner, so I'm not going to buy the bagels at Aldi, but I am making bagels. Well, is my flour the right flour? Or am I
Yeah.
using too much sugar? Or is it, like, okay to put the sugar in there? Or am I still doing the same exact thing that the and just knowing, like, the less ingredients, the ones that you can pronounce, the ones that you know what they are, let's start there,
Yeah.
and then you can start deciding, well, I'm cutting out all oils because none of them work for us, or
Yeah.
I'm allowing this because this does work for us, and you know what? You can have the homemade bagel, but I'll allow the Nutella,
Yeah.
like, whatever that is, and not being, and it's just like anything that we're choosing to homeschool. We don't know everything. I
Yeah.
literally had to look up, what did I have to look up the other day? The perimeter, how to find the perimeter and the area of something. I know that. I know I
Yeah.
learned it, but I'm old and I don't remember things. So I'm like Googling real quick. I'm like, hey, sorry, bud, I don't remember this, and
Let
like
me look it
learning it.
up.
And so doing the same thing with our food, like finding a trusted source and saying, okay,
Yeah.
how do I use this to make it better?
And I think people get scared because it feels like so much,
Mhm.
even though it can be really simple. But you, like you're saying, like start small,
Mhm.
start with one thing, change one thing. Like we changed our soap.
Yeah.
And that to me was like huge.
Yep. You made
Then
me
we
change my
changed
soap also.
Then it was like the oils.
Mhm.
Then it was slow. This was not like it's been 4 years that I've been
Yeah.
trying to change the way we eat, and it hasn't been perfect. And we still go out and get chips and salsa. And
Mhm.
we still go out
I've
and
had
do.
wings with you and have
Yeah.
gotten the text message, "I'm dying." And
Yes,
I'm like, "Yes."
yeah. Actually, last night for a birthday, I had a couple of bites of somebody's birthday cake, and
Mhm.
I cannot tell you how much I regretted it afterwards. And in the moment when I was eating it, I could taste
Mhm.
the like chemical sugar
Mhm.
flavor and all of these things where you're just like, wow, this is a store bought cake. So,
Mhm.
they put who knows what in
Yeah.
there. But I also don't want to be rude. And you're going to have to make those choices
Yeah.
because you can't expect everyone to kind of cater to however you eat. Like I was saying before, you want to be respectful of other people
Yeah.
and their choices and whatever. And
Mhm.
so make the choice. Are you going to try the cake or are you not? In the
Yeah.
moment, I was like, yeah, I'm going to try it. So I had a couple bites and it was not good,
I felt that way eating the kids' Halloween candy. Like, I know Hershey's, like, changed their location and recipe and whatever. Okay, that stuff's gross now.
Yeah.
It's, like, bad, like, a Hershey bar, it, like, pulls apart. It doesn't even,
No.
like, break. It, like, it's bleh.
Oh,
They're gross.
wow.
I tried a Kit Kat, and I was like, "This is also gross." The only thing that has maintained its deliciousness is Milk Duds.
Oh, wow.
And it's
That's impressive.
I mean, they're good. But yeah, like I will taste things. I'm like, this is bad. We went to Starbucks and I used to love their pumpkin cream cheese muffin thing.
Yeah.
And I have been abstaining for years. I only have had one in 2 years. And I'm like, I'm getting the muffin. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
And I don't know if their recipe has changed or how
It's
I've
you.
eaten has
Yeah.
changed so much. But
Yeah.
both Jude and I were like, this
Well, you
isn't
know how we
good.
talk about our kids, they're picky eaters.
Hmm.
Oh, but let them try it. Let them keep trying. Your palate changes. Your palate
Yeah.
changes. That's the same for us too. And so
Yeah.
pork rinds, you used to hate them.
And
You thought they were disgusting.
I
And now
did.
you like them
Yeah.
because you slowly tell yourself,
Right.
you're telling yourself this is good for me and this is and
Yeah.
your palate does change the more
And
you
you
have
want the
it.
chip, like I wanted a chip-like thing, so that was the
That was your
crunchiest thing
chip.
I could get my hands on.
Yeah.
Especially with, like, us doing road trips and stuff and traveling, I normally be like, "Okay, let's just go and pick up some snacks at Buc-ee's, get
Mhm.
whatever you want," and I'm like, let's just get some jerky and some"
Call it a day.
yeah. Like, I don't want and that's the other thing that we noticed big I think this is what probably solidified it for me, is that, okay, so we're from Maryland, home is Maryland, we live here now, love it, and going home, every single time we would get sick. Every single time. Kids are never sick here. I was just sick a couple weeks ago, but, like, we just don't get sick here,
Mhm.
and I was, like, trying to think of what I could I'm like, "Yeah, the sunshine, it's a little bit gloomy there, whatever." Um, but this last time we were there in the heat of summer, and it was great weather, beautiful. We were sick as dogs, and we weren't sleeping right. We were eating out at restaurants because my dad loves to eat out. So we eat out almost every single day with him, which is great, and I want my kids to do that, and we're gonna do it again this time.
Yeah.
But when we need to sleep better. We need to make sure that we're eating when we're home, eat what we know and what is good. Like, we would just go to the grocery store, and I'd be like, "Well, I don't really wanna cook, so I'm just gonna grab the frozen pizza. I'm gonna grab
Mhm.
the bagels and the cereal." We get sick every single time. And
Mhm.
I was like, "This time we're not doing that." Like,
Yeah.
normally we stay in our apartment, but my mom has turned our apartment into a classroom, which is great, and I love that for her. So I don't have the kitchen. I mean, I have her kitchen, which I'm gonna make a mess of and irritate her, I'm sure. But, I told the boys, I'm like, "I'm cooking. Like, I'm gonna make bagels before we go, and we're gonna
Yeah.
not" and see, like, it's almost like I'm testing the waters, and we're going in December where it's gonna be cold and it's gonna be gloomy because the sun ain't coming out the whole time we're there, I'm sure of it. So and just to see, like, what and we're not sleeping in our basement apartment, we'll be upstairs where the light's going to wake us up, and we're not gonna oversleep, and we're not gonna stay up too late. So I'm excited to see what the changes will be, but I think all of
Yeah.
those things will affect us, and I don't think we'll get sick. I
Yeah.
really don't. I think
Yeah.
I think you posted the other day, it's not cold and flu season, it's artificial dye and sugar season,
It
like
really is. I
and
mean,
that's
you've
all
got
it is.
excuse me, you've got Halloween, which is a ton of sugar and red
Mhm,
40 and dyes and oils and all of these things.
mhm,
Then you have Thanksgiving, all the pies, sugar, all
mhm,
the like cranberry out of a can, and all,
mhm.
you have just like this influx of
Junk.
sugar. And then Christmas again, Christmas cookies, more red 40, more red dye. Plus, there's not as much sun because
Mhm,
it is winter. And so the sunshine is not doing what it's supposed to be doing, which
mhm.
is like cleansing you.
Even here, it's out and it's still even hot, but,
But
like,
you're not getting as much
you're not
sun.
sitting on the
Yeah.
beach and getting burnt. Like, I
Mhm.
would get burnt in the summer. Well, not anymore because I don't wear sunglasses anymore, and so I don't get burnt anymore, but also your fault. But I could be outside all day and not get a lick of sun like, tan
Yeah.
because it's just not the same.
It's not the same.
It still
And
feels
so
like the same.
then you have a little small break in January and then Valentine's Day. Again,
Mhm,
you've got sugar again. And then you've got Easter,
mhm,
sugar again. And so then you've got kids that are like running around like crazy, getting diagnosed with
mhm.
ADHD when in reality it's the red 40 and all the things that they've been eating. Their body is just
Plus
literally cannot.
most kids are getting 8 hours of screen time a day, so you're sitting still, you're dormant, you're not doing anything,
Mhm.
and then you're amping your whole body up, like
Your immune system is tanking, your
yeah.
body is fighting constantly. You're like in this fight or flight situation because
Yeah,
you're stressing your body. You're
mhm,
continuously stressing your body. And so it just creates this entire
and then we do it for our
ecosystem
whole
for
lives.
failure. Yeah.
We do it our whole
Our
lives,
whole lives.
and then we're in our mid-30s going, "What the heck happened?
Yeah.
Why does my
Yeah.
body look this way? Why does it act this way? Why do I feel this way?" You're like, "Oh, well,
Who knew?
who knew?" Everybody, all the people up on top, but here we are.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can all get
Put
healthy
all
again.
that to.
Get it all out there. A little
Hmm.
transparency and
Yeah.
hopefully hold these big old like Kellogg's accountable for. There's no reason for that.
Chick-fil-A, Kellogg's.
I had Chick-fil-A the other day. I didn't even like it.
Yeah.
What the heck, bro? That was
Yeah.
the Lord's
Because
chicken.
Chick-fil-A is all natural chicken, and it is.
Mhm.
But it also, have you ever looked at the ingredients in like a chicken sandwich?
No, the food babe
It's like
ruined it.
600 ingredients, 60.
Yeah.
But
The food babe
60
ruined it.
ingredients in a chicken sandwich should be one.
Yeah.
Chicken. You know
Chicken.
what I mean? Not all of this other additive stuff
Yeah.
that there's in there.
No,
And
I really like loved Chick-fil-A for a long time. I even, when I was like at the height of like losing weight back when, I guess it's like 2018, Bennett was a little bit older, or he's like 2-ish. I would go to Chick-fil-A and get the wraps or the grilled chicken, and would feel, I mean, I felt great. I lost like 30 pounds, and I was also working out a lot. But the other day we had it at Co-op. I don't know, we had somewhere. We stopped for the boys, and I was like, "Give me a bite of that," and I was like, "This isn't even good. It's
Yeah.
not. The fries are still good though."
oh, always.
But I'm like, "This isn't even good." And then even today we went to Starbucks to get our reusable red cups, like regular citizens would do, and you had to get a holiday drink. First of all, they're 5 million calories. I don't want your holiday drink,
And
but I want
$8.
yeah. So I got my $8, 800-calorie drink, and then the boys were like, well, their friends got one. And I had just gotten them like breakfast there, and I was like, no, 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 and they were like, we want it. And I'm like, well, then you can spend your money on it. I'm not getting it. So they get a sugar cookie frappuccino.
What?
And the caramel brulee frappuccino, which I had the caramel brulee latte. It's delicious. All 800 calories of it. I didn't finish it. And they took one sip and they're like, oh, this is great. It tastes like chemicals. And when they can taste it, I'm like, yes, like you don't like this. This isn't good. It's like the third frappuccino you just tried. He doesn't like them because he can taste the poison.
Yeah.
So it's poison.
Everything
Everything's poison. Everything is poison. Nothing is safe. You can enjoy nothing. Go eat an apple. And then when I was texting you the other day about making candy apples, you were like, make sure you boil them to get the wax off. I'm like, the wax? Like,
Yeah.
what, bro? Like, can we just eat the food? Like, it's bananas.
It is crazy. I mean, I think a lot of people don't realize that when you go to the grocery store and you've got piles and piles of apples and tomato and banana and all of this stuff, like they're not in their natural state for one, or grown naturally, and they are like onions, for example, and potatoes, like they're housed in a barn for months and months and months before they even come to you.
What I really
Well, how are you going to make them last for months and months and months? Well, you're going to spray them. You're going to genetically modify them. You're going to alter them in some way, because we have gotten to the point where we want to go to the grocery store because I forgot one ingredient and I know they're going to have it because that's the grocery store. I was talking to my grandmother, I think it was like a year ago, and I asked her, did they have grocery stores when you were, she was born in the 30s. She said in the 40s, there were no grocery stores where she lived.
Yeah.
In South America, there were no grocery. You got your milk from a guy that drove down the road to get to bring you milk. There was a baker that you could either go to or they would come to you. And then there were farms, and that's where you got your food. It was like grocery stores were just on the cusp in that part of the country, or that continent, I guess, in South America, that there were no grocery stores. It wasn't like you just go to the store and find anything you need. And I always thought it was funny when we were growing up and I would go to the grocery store with her and she'd be like, wow, look at, you can find this and you can find that. And I never realized that the reason that she would be so amazed was because she didn't have that when she was coming up,
Yeah,
it's like,
that's wild to think about.
It's not normal.
I know. Well, and I always say, like, there's a little farm stand down here. And I always say, I'm going to start getting my fruits and vegetables from them. And then I never do because conveniently, like, one, I can never tell if they're actually open or not. But two, like, just going to the store and getting, like, a big bag of onions. My neighbor, she brings me random veggies and stuff. And she handed me all these, a box full of onions wrapped in newspaper. Nice. And she was like, this makes them last, like, forever. And I was like, it does. And they were the best onions. She got them at some, I don't know, farm thing, and she was like, I bought too many, and I was like, I will take them.
I'll take some.
But I had like balls of newspaper in the fridge, and the boys were like, what is happening? I'm like, apparently onions last longer this way. But you notice the taste difference when you do stop and buy them from those places.
Yeah.
But it's like, we're told, okay, don't buy the processed stuff. And then we're like, shop. One of the things a nutritionist told me, shop the perimeter of the store. Great, got it. And now it's like, well, that's not real either. So you just have to learn to do the best you can
Mm-hmm.
and give yourself the grace to keep learning and changing and trying different things
Yeah.
and going to the farm stand that may or may not be open at a really bad intersection. And then, figure it out and figure out what works for your family, what doesn't work, and how everyone's going to thrive
Yep.
and not eat junk.
And eat more butter.
Eat more butter. I'm out of butter.
That's
I know. I just ran out. I need to go. It's in my cart. It's in my cart. I gotta go get some butter.
I buy pounds and pounds of butter at a time. Yep.
Well, yeah, because your bakery stuff too.
Oh yeah, but like aside from bakery, like household groceries, butter always on top of the list.
I do have to get butter. And I did think because I'm going to be baking more because of the holidays, I'm like, I need butter. But now I find myself making like, okay, well, I'm going to bake with the good butter, not the overprocessed stuff. And I'm going to bake with the organic sugars and they look different. They smell different. Like they're different color. It's bananas. It's bananas to me. Bananas are not bananas. Like, it is crazy to me. And I noticed, like, if I make a chocolate chip cookie with all the good, higher quality stuff, it's so much better than if I make it with, it's all sugar, so it all really does taste fine.
I made brownies, tallow brownies, and the recipe originally called for like a cup and a half of sugar. And I looked at that and I said, absolutely not. I'm not doing that. So funny thing is, though, if you want really fudgy, delicious brownies, it needs that kind of amount of sugar. And so I did not add that amount of sugar, but I did put some maple syrup, not a cup and a half. But I used maple syrup to kind of keep it sweet. But it gave me a completely different recipe. And that's something that you'll learn when you bake. Like just changing the ingredients slightly is going to give you something totally different. Yeah. For example, you make bread, you've got flour and water and milk and eggs or whatever, but you change the quantity of that. So like your fat content goes up or down. You're going to get a completely different type of loaf of bread, Italian bread, French bread. They all essentially have the same ingredients in them. It's just different amounts of each. Same thing with the brownies. They didn't turn out quite like brownies. They tasted great. But then you have to think, do I even like brownies? Was it actually the brownie or was it just the amount of sugar that was in there? Do I like that kind of food or do I like something different? Do I want to accept the fact that this is, this brownie with maple syrup brownie actually tasted a lot like a chocolate cake donut, like a baked cake donut. Yum. Very, very good. But it wasn't that gooey brownie. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so you kind of have to come to terms at a certain point where you can't get the same effect by not adding the same amount of sugar or the same amount of whatever it might be that you're trying to steer clear of. I usually swap out fats. I usually swap out sugars and things like that. You're going to have to come to terms with maybe I just don't eat that anymore because I know my body is going to react a certain way, especially if you have allergies. A lot of the reason we don't eat the way that we eat is because we have a bad reaction to it or my kids have a bad reaction to it. But that's where you're like, is it worth it?
Is it worth it?
Chips and salsa are always worth it.
Chips and salsa are always worth it. That's the big takeaway. Chips and salsa.
Always.
With a side of margarita.
French fries. Always worth it. But we make tallow fries at home. We fry them in tallow and they are...
I've been doing homemade French fries. I've been doing... I did do some potatoes, so they made a beef stew. And I just put a lot of beef and some potatoes. Yeah. And it's good. It's good and it's hearty and it fills them up for a minute. And I think I've gotten to the point where I'm just I'm just going to eat as whole as we can. Yep. And we're going to make as much at home as we can. And I do have my hurricane survival kit of ramen.
Ugh. We all have that.
Bennett made one the other day. I was like, that's for the hurricane that's not coming. And he was like, I just want one. And he took 2 bites of it. I'm like, see, you guys don't even like this stuff. Why are we still doing this? But they've been told they like it, so they think they like it.
That's true.
Well, thank you. It was so fun. I know. We've mocked each other a couple times.